Okay, welcome to the Municipal District of St. Stephen Special Committee of the Whole meeting agenda. Wednesday, November 19th, 2025 at 6:01 probably. All right, call to order. Before we begin, I'd like to respectfully acknowledge that we are gathered today on ancestral, unceded territory of the Passamaquoddy people. And I'll start with a mover and seconder for that the agenda of the Special Committee of the Whole meeting November 19th, 2025 be approved. Councillor Wright, Councillor Heislip, questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion approved. Okay. Any conflicts of interest this evening? Hearing none. And new business. All right, so let's start off with the municipal budget of 2026, review of the draft general operating fund budget. And we might as well let you take the floor, Jeff.
Thank you, Your Worship. So thanks to lots of work by both this committee and Frank and whatnot, we're closing in on the end of the general operating fund review, which is nice. Earlier today, council would have been provided the summary sheet here of changes that we did since the last time we all sat down together. Like I say, the budget continues to be a live document as staff continues to review it and question ourselves and get new information in from other levels of government even. So since our last chat, we did increase the general government services special projects by $45,000. That's to have our rebranding stuff have some money for implementation. So rebranding of the website, decals for the trucks, those kind of things. So we have a fund that we can pull on to do that kind of work, new letterhead, whatever that might be. We had budgeted for the completion of the consulting work, but hadn't done the implementation side, is what we realized. Our regional landfill contracts increased by $84,000. That's the waste disposal side of rural waste collection. Those numbers came in from our friends at local government just on Monday. The good side is the waste collection contract that is managed by them. We had significantly over budgeted for the total based on the numbers they gave us. So that came back down by $155,000. And then during our department head meeting, we got talking again about the downtown facade improvement program that you guys had seen an initial draft of. I've had chats with the BIA on it, and we've made some amendments based on their advice. So we're planning on bringing that program back to you for potential approval, and possibly next week with the changes. And so we realized that we should have some funding in there to implement that program as well. So we put $30,000 in for year one of that. And there's a few other tweaks and little things here and there. So when it's all balanced out, your budget only changed by just under $7,800 since the last time you looked at it, which left you with $422,682 unallocated based on 2025 tax rates. So at this point, it's what do we want to do with that? Because when Mr. Godso and I submit our stuff officially to the government, we can't be out more than $5 when we balance. We do our balanced budget legislation. So just some basic policy options that are available to you. The tax rate reduction costs are there. The general capital reserve, you can put anything in. General operating reserve, that one does have a legal max value of $707,902. Or you can do anything else that you either heard of tonight, whether that's buying Sean a backhoe or a truck that we didn't fund in our capital plan. My recommendation, after talking with Frank and looking at some things, our recommendation is actually to move the unallocated funds into reserves. We will be doing a significant draw on our operating reserve in December. We know that of something that's coming to you for approval. And so replacing those funds would be very important. Frank, were we getting that one up to? Were we getting that one up to the legal maximum? The operating fund reserve.
We were really close.
Really close, yeah. So we've been over the last number of years, we've been feeding that reserve to get to that legal maximum. So our intention is to get within a few $1,000s of that because it does generate interest. So to stay legal, we have to leave a little bit of room for growth, and then put the rest in the capital reserve for the long-term planning of capital assets that we've been discussing, as far as your rolling stock, your buildings, all those kind of things that we have to plan for. And if we did that, we'd be able to hold the tax rates to the exact same numbers that we had in 2025, combined with the assessment freeze that GNB has put in. For the great majority of our taxpayers, they would see no change on their tax bills unless they did something new on their property that got caught by assessment, like a new garage or something else, in that 1.5% of new assessment growth that we had this year. So that's our recommendation, but obviously it's up to you folks to debate and give us direction on how you would like that 422,000 and change allocated.
I'll just share for council that, just to make sure you understand too, I think you know, once we put that in reserves, we all have to vote to pull it back out. So you still have control as council for that money. It keeps our tax rate where it is, and it keeps us there for the developments when they come, and cash flow for roads and any work that we need to do to get the funding. So, Councillor Greenlaw.
Yep, I like the idea of holding the tax rate and putting most of it in the reserves. Quick question, the 84,000, that's tipping fees?
That's the number that was sent over to us from local government. Yeah,
Okay, so is there some reason why that seems to be quite a bit higher than it was? That's just their estimates, right?
that is their estimates. Yeah.
Okay, and then we were over on the hauler contract by 155.
And again, that was our taking a shot in the dark, because we only manage the contract for Ward 2. The Ward 1 is managed by our friend next door, and he was in the midst of a retendering. And he was and one of the reasons that the numbers came in late is he was waiting on some contractors to update some numbers. And so we had to, again, we always guess conservatively, and when we're doing our budgeting, obviously we were overly conservative with that line based on the numbers that came in, which is a nice thing. But so that's what we got.
Yeah, no, that was my, concern that, we're just getting these numbers now. You'd think we'd have had them before, but anyway, that's good. Thank you very much.
It happens a lot in this world when we're doing our budgets, getting numbers now and later. And right to the last second, they keep flowing in and changing. So Deputy Mayor?
Okay. What did you say the limit was for the reserve?
So the only one that has a legal limit is the operating reserve, and it grows over time. It's 5% of the previous year's budget is how they calculate it. So 5% of our 2025 budget is $707,902. So we have so Frank's just pointing out we have 134,000 and change of room, but does that include the draw in December? No, that doesn't include the draw that we know is coming in December, which will increase that available gap. And so what we would do, if it's your direction to split it between the reserves, Frank and I, we're in the process of going through the reserve calculations for everything for the end of the year for you guys anyway. So we'll come back with specific numbers at probably next week's council meeting to say this is our recommended, how much into each fund, so that it's all part of your resolution.
Councillor Wright?
Thank you. Yes, I'm also in favor of holding the tax rate steady and transferring into reserves. Absolutely. Because we still, just like we vote on the budget, we allocate it now, or we can draw it out later and allocate it to something. So I'm in favor.
Councillor Greenlaw?
Just part of the reason why I want to leave it there is because we don't know what the property assessment, revision is going to do, right, as far as tax base. So it's nice to have a little bit of reserve built there, because that could take us either way. And with the development we've got coming, with the new, our tax base is growing, and that's going to affect our equalization. So, yeah. So
It will be a wash, hopefully.
hopefully, yeah.
It'll be a wash, hopefully, yes. Okay.
So I'm going to take it as direction from the committee to split the remaining allocation between the two reserves, based on the work that Frank and I do over the next week or so.
Yes. All right. No.
In a sense, that'll wrap up your general operating fund, which is your big budget, your 14 million and change budget. So thanks to Frank and his team for that, and the department heads and you guys for sitting through it and sifting through all the things that we put in front of you through all the departments. It's always a big task. So with that, we can move on to what is our much smaller budget, which is our utility budget. So the summary of our utility budget is here. You'll see, again, trying very hard to maintain a status quo budget within the utility, despite the fact that costs rise and everything else. So we're looking at just over $3 million budget to run the municipal utility for 2026. We'll go through like we did with the general operating. So on the revenue side, here you'll be able to see the split between your water and sewer for your residential and your industrial clients, which is a great majority of our funding comes from. But otherwise, not too much change in that side of things. I'm just playing with my glasses here. Interest on overdue accounts that we had. You can see we under budgeted in 2025. Part of that is we recognize within our administration that we need to enhance some of our collections practices as to avoid those overdue accounts. So that's something that Frank brought up just the other day at our department head meeting, and we're game planning around that for 2026. Because while it is revenue, it's not the kind of revenue that we necessarily like to see on these books. So you see a surplus coming in here, similar to your general operating fund where you get to bring in your second year surplus. The utility runs a little bit differently where surpluses and deficits can get spread out over a number of years and brought in over time. So that Frank's got a nice spreadsheet that shows pluses and minuses over, I think it's a 10 or 15 year span, I think. And so it's a calculation that from previous years that we get to bring in this year. It would help out the revenue side of the budget. So essentially, that's $3,061,110 in revenue. Feel free to jump in, Frank or Sean, at any point if I'm glancing over something that I shouldn't. Moving over to the expenditure side, this is the water supply section. You see, actually, very, very, very similar budget for this operation. Not too much to highlight here unless there's questions from you folks. Seeing none. So again, purification and treatment. Basically, just an increase in our treatment sampling, our costs for couriering the samples and getting the testing done go up like everything. So just looks like we needed a little bit of extra room there, but nothing overly significant there. This is a bigger section of the budget for transmission and distribution. Again, not much. No changes. Is there anything we need to highlight on this one? The engineering. The engineering is a big change there. This has a lot to do with the fact that we are very cognizant of the fact that we have big things coming in the utility. I think, and Sean has mentioned it at previous meetings, we have to make decisions. This council, the incoming council, are going to be faced with a number of conversations around the long-term viability of our current water source. Is that well field going to be what we invested in for the next 150 years for this system? Do we have to look at another location, another type of treatment? Lots of things there. We are very well aware that we are on the radar of our friends at the province in relation to needing assistance with respect to our utility. And through quiet conversations, we've been told that they need to see a plan. They're willing to help, but they want to see a plan. So we've started that work with our engineering firm, and we're going to continue that work. But we did realize that we didn't really have a good place to budget the costs associated with that work. So we needed a spot to park that. So that's why we went into there, to figure out the short, medium, long-term planning and be prepared to talk to our provincial and federal counterparts as to what we need here.
So you're talking about funds needed to do the work and the study and to get to where we want to get to, not, it's just getting there.
Yeah, this is to develop the plan, possibly do some investigations in the field as far as if we have to drill a sample hole or something like that, those kind of things, in order to have a proposed solution long-term solution to our utility that we can use as the application to our friends for hopefully significant financial investments into our long-term viability and sustainability of the water system. Is that good? Go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we had talked, like, I'll use when we had the collapse of the well at Maxwell Crossing a couple of years ago, there was a lot of engineering expenses associated with that, so that ended up being unbudgeted expenditures. So knowing that we're gonna have these costs that we're not budgeting for doesn't really make sense, so we're budgeting for it rather than coming to you and say, hey, we spent the money that we didn't have. In layman's terms, I guess.
And the other thing in this budget is you'll see the decrease in the water meter purchase. That has a lot to do with our transition to flat rate for our residential clients. We do have to replace meters from time to time, just not as significant a budget line for next year. So yeah, any questions on this one? Oh.
Councilor Greenlaw?
Yeah, on the income part where you looked at interest on overdue accounts, that went from 45 to 85,000. Is that part and parcel to the fixed rate, or is that because there are more outstanding accounts, or?
Well, it's largely because we were of the position that we had a better handle on it in 2025 than we did. The numbers from 2024 and the current numbers for 2025 seem to indicate that we still have we still have to work on that as a trend issue. And it's not so much that there are necessarily new accounts; it's that our collection practices need to improve. Yeah.
Councilor Heislip?
So I assume we're putting a little bit of a pause on the new meters that we were installing and that kind of program, obviously.
So yeah, so as far as our residential clients go, unless there's some kind of problem that is causing a leak or something we have to deal with, we're not putting in new. We do still have meters out there with the non-residential clients, the non-normal residential. So we'll still have some work going on that side as far that are consumption-based billings. Your industrials, your multi-unit residentials, the big apartments and things like that, they still get metered at this point. But yeah, as far as the residential install, it's definitely a decrease there. Oh, yep.
And the other thing with the metering, we do install meters, as Jeff said, on our commercial clients, industrial clients, but it's more of a user pay. So this represents, it represents the cost of obtaining those meters, but we also have revenue coming in from those commercial clients for those same meters.
Okay.
I'll move on to the next slide. All right, so getting onto the into source of supply section here. What do we need to highlight on this one, Chief? Pretty much we have a decrease in this one on the wages side. This is also an outflow of not meter reading. So we're doing some human resources reallocations and things like that as a result, which is nice because it does decrease we have to pick up the cost usually on the operating side, but it does help the utility out in this regard. So that's the big change on this one. And then each side of the utility also helps fund the billing and collection, sending out the bills, those kind of costs. So that's what you see at the bottom. So your total for your water supply side of the equation is just a hair under $1.3 million. Going on to the sewer side of things. Pretty much a pretty static budget there. Actually, very small decrease, but there's no questions there. So on the collection system, again, so a $5,000 decrease actually here, looks like. Again on the wages side, right? So. And gravel, yeah. Oh, and gravel. Yeah. So we have a decrease in this area mainly around the SCADA maintenance. We've put a fair bit of work into our SCADA systems over the last few years. For those that may not know, SCADA is the technology that exists behind our water and sewer systems that does computerized monitoring of pretty much all elements of our system and can remotely alert our operators if there's a problem. Depending on the problem, sometimes they can fix it from their phone or their laptop, but from at home. Other times they'll have to go in, but it's our 24-hour, 7-day-a-week safety net that monitors everything. So sewage treatment and disposal, largely related to the lagoon. Here, what do we got to highlight on this one? The repair and maintenance. So repair and maintenance for the lagoon. The lagoon's been going through some trials and tribulations of late. We've been, the layman's term, it's chasing a small leak in the liner and doing a fair bit of work there. There's going to be, and all indications are that the fix is not going to be an easy one. We've tried the easy approach and not had as much luck as we had hoped. So we got some work to do around there that we know of. So you see an increase there, but that'll come back to council, I think, for some significant discussions about significant investments eventually on the relating to the lagoon liner and long-term sustainability and viability around the lagoon itself. And you see the engineering is up as well, which kind of they go hand in glove as far as addressing that minor at this point failure that we're mitigating with other efforts.
I know I'm probably jumping ahead, but would we still do the lift station work if that liner work gets too costly, or are you thinking?
The lift station is going to it needed to be done many years ago. And it's not getting any better. I know those of you did the tour with Sean and the crew, paid a visit to the big hole in the ground over there. I don't want to be alarmist, but if that system fails, we're going to have a much bigger problem on our hands than a very small leak at the sewage lagoon. Between the proximity of a waterway and the concept of essentially raw sewage running down King Street, the guys have done great work bailing, wiring, bubble gumming it together over the years, and it keeps getting bumped on our capital plan. It has over the years for other things that sometimes you might think are more, well, for lack of a better term, politically sexy, like new pool decks and things like that. No one. I say to council all the time, you never see the mayor standing next to the new sewer line or the sewage lagoon getting their picture taken, right? And that's the nature of our business, and we know that. But it'll be very important for us to continue to get that raw sewage to the lagoon, even if we're still dealing with problems at the lagoon.
Yeah, and I will add, there's a lot of labor hours going in. I see them there on weekends a lot, so you can tell that would all add up. So I'm sure they'd all appreciate that thing working like it should be.
Anything else we want to touch on in treatment and disposal?
Nope. Wait.
Oh, yeah.
So the leak in the lagoon, are there any environmental issues, or is it small enough that it's basically contained? Are we monitoring, or?
I know the answer.
Yeah, no, we've been in contact. Of course, we have to report this stuff immediately. We've had Dylan in. It's under control. Environment's aware of what's going on. It's not major, but it needs to be dealt with. We've sampled the water, and it's in compliance, so to speak. It's in the end where it's on the release end, so to speak, so the water's been more or less treated. So no real issues there, but it still needs to be dealt with because, if you know, small leak can become a big leak, and a big leak can become a catastrophic failure in extreme points. So it has to be dealt with at some point.
All right, thank you. Carry on.
Just wrapping up the collection disposal side, again, part of the billing and collection types, postage and things like that in there. So your collection disposal, just about $1 million per year. Getting into the fiscal services, which is the Frank's lovely world of borrowing and interest and debentures, things like that. Not too much in there. Frank, do you have anything you want to highlight on the fiscal services side?
Yeah, the only thing, so 5.
Get your mic if it's not on already.
Yeah, it's on.
Okay.
Somebody must have put it on for me.
Yeah.
On the water side, there really isn't anything. I mean, our current debentures are, the schedule is there. It's being funded as we're required to be funded. There is a small, I may be jumping ahead here for you, Jeff, but there is a small change on the sewer side.
Yeah, we can go there.
Yep. And that's related, so it's just a little bit further down.
You one more slide?
Yep. Well, see it, but anyway. Future debentures. There it is. So on the sewer side, and again related to the lift station, we had, and again, you may want to talk on this, I'm not sure, but there is interest in there related to the cost of boring for that station. So we have budgeted for that based on estimated costs for that project. Other than that, it's related to, for the most part, related to current debentures and current interest that we're paying on a short-term basis.
So here we have, and the last slide here, Lee, is our transfers in between funds. So you'll see that we're proposing a significant investment into the utility capital reserve for $382,519, and then a $70,000 into the utility operating reserve, which would drive the utility operating reserve up to very near its legal maximum as well. These reserves are, I would say, probably, as much as the operating funds are important, these ones are probably more important right now when you're dealing with a 152-year-old utility system. We can't always predict everything that's going to happen to it, and to have at least some funds in the reserves that we can draw on in the event they're required is really, really important here. Honestly, they should be quite a bit higher from a good asset management point of view, but we also have to keep in mind that this all affects user rates, and we're trying to get better while also understanding that there's affordability concepts in here. And great chance to have a friendly reminder that none of this, not a single number in this touches your tax rates, because it's the old Chinese wall between the utility and the operating, where money can't cross between the two. So this all has to be user fee funded and or grants and things like that. So, which is where our ability to seek out grants from our friends and do those studies that we need to, those plans, are exceptionally important. But with that, unless you guys have some final wrap-up on utility.
No, the only exception to what Jeff just said is there is 125,000 in there for, related to water transfer for the fire department. Other than that, there is no effect on the general fund, as Jeff said. Pardon?
Yeah.
That's the one thing that's over the wall, yeah. Well, you're using utilities resources, so there has to be some recognition of that, and that's what that 125,000 does.
Thank you, Greg. I should have mentioned that. Your worship?
Councilor Greenlaw.
So that budget is at the current rate for water sewer fees, or will they be, have to adjust them, or?
We're still working through the details of it at the moment. Currently, it's currently set is the flat rate for residential would require an increase. We were doing the calculations today. The equivalent of about a large Tim Hortons coffee per week would be what it would boil down to on the residential side. The industrial side, a bit more significant as far as the consumption rate on that one, but two things factor into that. One, the industrial rates, industrial usage consumption has been dropping significantly over time, and yet we need to keep capturing the revenue. So as they cut back, the rates are going up to kind of balance out the revenue. And then the other thing on the consumption side is to keep in mind is that the consumption-based billing, the control over that cost is in the hands of the user. They can cut consumption and save money, whereas the flat rate users, once we assign the rate, it doesn't matter what they do. They can, it's all the water that they want for the year, right? And so there is an increase on the industrial side that we'll have to put in place. And those numbers will be coming out to you when we do the bylaw at the next meeting or whenever we finalize.
Usually it's early January.
So
Just for clarification, is that a Tim's coffee or a Starbucks coffee?
it was based off of Mr. Subner's Tim Hortons app on his phone. So it was I think it was a large Tim Hortons coffee. But as we've sat here over the last number of years, I think committee and council are quite aware that the utility, there's not a lot of flexibility in how the utilities run right now. Administratively, we want to work on modernizing a lot of things to bring down the overall cost of operations. To do that, obviously, is going to take significant investment, well beyond the ability of this utility to self-finance, even under borrowing conditions. We are going to need to get into arrangements with our federal and provincial counterparts to really decide whether at some point the river becomes the source of the water, whether we need to get into UV treatments and microfiltrations and beyond just the superchlorination type things that we're doing at Maxwell Crossing, which is admittedly older technology than what modern plants would have in it right now. We know that in the utility, you weren't on the regulation change call, but Blair, our operator, and I were on the call with the government about the changes coming to the regulations around the potable water. And I think it put our operator into a bit of a head spin of what's coming. And it's not going to be cheap. It's not going to be easy, but it will be required. And hopefully that when requirements change, governments will also sprinkle some cash on top to help you get to those. But we know that this is going to be a tough one. It's going to be a tough one for this council and the incoming council to handle these big changes, and we're going to work through it with our partners as best we can.
And I will say, we're not alone in this. You've all talked with our counterparts out there when we meet in Fredericton, and every municipality is going to be dealing with this. All the more reason to get ahead of this and get that funding improved so we can get ahead of that and get a hold of that funding when she comes released. Yeah. Okay. Is there any more questions?
Yeah, with that kind of wraps up our utility budget draft presentation. And so, and that's the last piece. Oh, there you go.
Just on the lift station, the 1.2 million, are we borrowing the whole 1.2 million? Are we going to CCBF for some of it? Exactly how is all that going to be funded?
Our proposal would be that we borrow the full amount for the lift station. CCBF is the great joy about CCBF is that it's available to so many different types of projects that not eating up an entire 5-year allotment to try and get the lift station done right away opens up a lot of policy options for this council and next councils to reassign those funds to other priorities, whether that be roadways, sidewalks, rec facilities, whatever because it's such a wide program. And we know from the history that this particular project has been bumped and bumped and bumped from the CCBF. And we really want to just commit to go out, borrow the money, get the project done, have it be good for the lifespan of a lift station, and then focus on the other things.
So, and that's where the $25,000 was in the budget to help pay for, to help cover payments on the.
Yeah, so that 25. There you go. That 25,000 that Mr. Godzo indicated was the first year interest, which is all you have to pay for in that first year when you're doing these borrowings through MCBB. So it is allocated already within the budget on the assumption that you would approve our capital plan to borrow that money. Should you choose to tell us not to borrow that money, that's a $25,000 saving we take out. That's up to you folks.
Councilor Otis.
I'm just curious what the lifespan is on a lift station.
I'd say 50 years, give or take. I mean, it's going to require maintenance, but the structure itself is probably good for 50 years, give or take. Yep.
How old is the oldest one we're bubblegumming together?
I don't know. 50 years?
Old enough that none of us know.
Okay, who does? Okay, Councilor Wright.
Thank you. Jeff, a couple of years ago in one of our council meetings or committee meetings, it was discussed about how the municipal properties weren't all on meters at the time. Is that part of the upgrade project, or has that already been completed?
Can you repeat that again? Sorry, I caught the last part of it.
Thank you, Sean. It was mentioned in open session a year or two back that not all of our municipally owned properties were on meters at the time, water meters. And I know the goal was to get that all done, so I didn't know if it had already been done and were being metered yet, or if that's part of the final upgrade after we do this flat rate and do the whole thing all at once.
Yes, they have been all metered, but honestly, I don't think we've made the changes whereby we started charging each other's, but we now have some data as a result of the metering over the last couple of years. So if we decide that I'm going to charge Kev for pool water or whatever, we have the data to be able to say this is what it would be.
So that would, and again, that would be an operations cost that could potentially help out the water and sewer.
Yes,
Yeah.
could cross the line.
Yeah.
That could cross the line because it's actually paying for the service like any other client. So 100% you could do that. It would help the utility. It would drive up your costs on your operating. I mean, I wouldn't say drive up. It would more accurately reflect the costs of the services being provided now. Because I do think we're not accounting for that is a failure.
Wasn't on mic. Yes, I agree. Okay. And I guess, yeah, so we've already talked about that now, the lift station, and everyone kind of appreciates that and understands we need to move forward on that. And as
Your worship, you will be seeing that again because to do our application to MCBB, all that has to be signed off and authorized by you folks. So you'll see these things numerous times before we get to the end of the road of these projects. So if there's more debate, more things that you needed from us, feel free to ask, and we'll do our best to help you.
Yes, there is more time for all that discussion and debate, but also we don't want to put you through all this work and then come to say, we don't want to do that. But yeah, no, okay. That's it. All right, I don't have Counselor Harding tonight. I need a mover and seconder to adjourn.
Second.
Counselor Heislip, Counselor Greenlaw, all those in favor? 6:40.